I have eaten peanut butter nearly every day since I was about 55, and almost everything I was told about it turned out to be wrong. Not wrong in a way that hurt me, just confidently wrong by people who had never checked. So this is the 4 things I was told about peanut butter after 60, and what actually happens instead. No scare stories, nothing to buy, and I'm going to be honest about the one that did nothing for me at all. The change I noticed was not dramatic, and I want to say that up front. It was the first morning in years that I made breakfast without treating it as a chore to get through. That is the whole result. It was enough. The one at number 1 is the thing I got wrong for the longest, and it is the only one that changed what I actually put in my basket. I will save that for last. Maybe you have noticed you are not really hungry in the mornings anymore, but you are tired by 11. Maybe a meal that used to hold you until dinner does not hold you past 3. Maybe you have quietly simplified what you eat without ever deciding to. I know, I did all 3 and called it getting older. Here is the part nobody says out loud. That is a direction, not a destination. And directions can be turned. Number 4, the spoonful before bed and what it actually did. Let me start with the one that did nothing, because you have probably seen it. The claim is that a spoonful of peanut butter before bed does something particular for you overnight. I tried it properly, 3 weeks, most nights, and I wrote down how I slept because I did not trust myself to remember fairly. And the honest answer is that nothing happened. I slept the way I sleep, which is to say fine some nights and badly on others. In no pattern anyone could draw a line through. I want to be straight about that because it would be easy to leave it out and let you assume all 4 of these turned out to be true. They did not. This one did not. But something near it is true, and it is smaller and more useful. It is filling. And in those 3 weeks, I stopped having the thing I used to have at 9:30, which was 2 biscuits standing at the counter with the kitchen light off. Not because I had decided anything, because I was not looking for them. So the claim, as people tell it, that something special happens while you sleep, I did not find. The plain version, that a filling thing at the end of the evening means you stop grazing, I did find. And it is the version I would repeat to anyone. The difference between those 2 sentences is the difference between this channel and the one that sold you the first one. Number 3, it does not count as real protein, apparently. This is the one I heard most, usually from someone who had just told me about a powder. The idea is that the protein in peanut butter is somehow lesser, and that if you are trying to hold on to your strength, you are not supposed to count it. Here is what I found. A proper spoonful, the kind you would genuinely spread on toast, rather than the polite little scrape, gives you roughly what a large egg gives you. It is not a piece of fish or a chicken thigh, and I am not going to pretend it is. But it is not nothing, and calling it nothing is how I ended up eating a breakfast with almost no protein in for about 4 years. I want to confess the specific stupidity here. For a long stretch, I ate toast with jam in the morning because I had decided peanut butter was the indulgent option and jam was the sensible jam. I chose jam on the grounds that it was more sensible. That is what you believe when you absorb a rule without once turning it over. What changed when I swapped back was not a transformation. It was that I got to lunchtime without thinking about food, which had not been true for years. And there is a version of this if you do not like toast or cannot chew it comfortably, because that came up every time I mentioned it. It stirs into porridge, it goes into a bowl of yogurt, and in a soup it thickens it, and you would not know it was there. None of those are the lesser. They are the version that suits the morning you are actually having. The people telling me it did not count were not lying. They were repeating something they had heard, the same way I repeated it for 4 years to anyone who would listen. Number 2, a treat, to be rationed. And what rationing it actually cost me. The second thing I was told is that it is a treat rather than a food. And so the sensible thing is to be careful with it. I took that seriously for years. I have stood at a counter and leveled a spoon off with a knife, like someone measuring out a thing I was not quite allowed. And here is what being careful with it actually did. It did not mean I ate less. It meant I had a smaller breakfast, and then at 11 o'clock I had something else, and the something else was almost always worse, and I never counted it because it had not been a decision. That is the part nobody mentions about rationing a food. The ration is visible and the replacement is invisible. So I stopped rationing it and started using it properly, which for me is a spoonful you would recognize as a spoonful most mornings. I do not measure it and I do not track it. It is rich and I am not going to tell you otherwise. If you eat half a jar standing up, you will feel it. And I have done that too, on an evening that was not about peanut butter at all. But rich is not the same as a problem, and treat is not the opposite of food. The version of me who leveled off that spoon was not being disciplined. I was following a rule I could not have explained if you had asked me where it came from. Number 1, the one that changed what I buy, and the 10 seconds that fixed it. Here is the one I got wrong for longest. I was told, repeatedly, and by people I trusted, that the natural kind is the only one worth buying, and that everything else is not really peanut butter. So for years, I bought whichever jar had the most convincing word on the front: natural, original, traditional. I paid a premium for those words, and I never once checked whether the jar behind them deserved it. Then, somebody in a shop showed me the 10 seconds that sorted it, and it was not a brand, and it was not a price. Turn the jar over and read the list. That is it. A jar whose list says peanuts and possibly salt is the thing you think you are buying. A jar with a list, as long as your arm is a different product wearing the same coat, and the word on the front tells you nothing about which one you are holding. I had jars of both in my cupboard at the same time, and the expensive one was the worst of the two. The oil sitting on top, which I spent years thinking was a fault, is just what happens when there is nothing in there to stop it. You stir it back in. That is the whole story of the oil. And the reason this is at number 1 is that it is the only one of the 4 that changed my actual behavior rather than my opinion. The other 3 corrected something I believed. This one corrected what went into the basket every single time for the last several years. 10 seconds. Turning a jar over, reading 4 words instead of 1. I would give a great deal to have been told that at 50 rather than 61. The honest part, timelines, the thing to check, and what is simply allowed. Let me be straight about what to expect. The filling part is immediate, and that is genuinely the only fast thing here. Everything else I noticed took months, and I only saw it looking backwards, which is how most real change after 60 seems to work. Here is what this cannot do. It cannot fix a shoulder that has been complaining since well before I noticed it. It will not give you back the energy you had at 40, and anyone telling you a food will do that is selling something. It does not replace anything you are already taking. 2 things worth checking, and I will keep both short. If there is a peanut allergy anywhere in your household, none of this applies, and it is not worth the risk for a spoonful of anything. And if you have been told to keep an eye on salt, the salted and unsalted jars sit next to each other, and the choice is yours to make. But that is a question for whoever writes your prescriptions, rather than for me. Ask them. Do not adjust anything on your own. And some of what we are all feeling is not a problem waiting for a solution. Some of it is just a body that has put in 60-odd years of honest work, and it was never going to hand you back 40. You are allowed to be tired on a Wednesday without it meaning anything. The last thing I will say is that most people do not abandon this because it stopped working. They abandon it because somebody at a family lunch says one of these 4 things confidently, and it is easier to nod than to explain. I have nodded plenty of times. So that is the 4. The spoonful before bed did nothing special for me, but a filling evening stopped the grazing. It counts as protein, roughly what an egg gives you. Rationing it cost me more than eating it ever did. And the word on the front of the jar tells you nothing that 10 seconds, and the back of the jar will not tell you better. I did not need better information about peanut butter. I needed to stop taking my instructions from people who had never turned the jar over. Tell me in the comments what you would like explained next. I read every single one. If this was useful, a like helps it reach other people our age who are tired of being told things by people who never checked. And if you would rather understand what is actually going on than be frightened into buying something, that is the whole reason this channel exists. Here is to the healthy living years.